Shabbat Shalom. It is common to talk about Jewish history, and I myself have taught it this way in the following terms. There is the biblical period, and then there is the rabbinic period, and then there is the medieval period, and then there is the modern period. I no longer teach it that way, and when I'm teaching in the religious school at BIRS, and as Lynn and I have been constructing curricula over the last 2 years, I teach it the following way. There is the shepherd period. Let's call it, you know what? I'll make it easy. We'll use the word for Jew. There's the Hebrew period. Then there's the Israelite period. And then there is the Jew period. And then there's the Israeli period. What's important about this distinction is when you say the biblical period, it puts together both the shepherd period and the temple period, the Israelite period. And they are different in their spirituality, and it causes us to neglect the beauty of the shepherd period. The shepherd period is, and remember, I don't need to remind you, was Abraham a shepherd? Was Isaac a shepherd? Was Jacob a shepherd? Were they all shepherds? Was Moses a shepherd? Was King Saul a shepherd? Was King David a shepherd? As we say about turtles, it shepherds all the way down. The shepherd period is the period in which our indigenous wisdom is manifest. It shows a very, very deep connection to the land and a very deep commitment to sustainability. And it's the values in the shepherd period and within each period that are then delivered and carried on in other ways in the later periods. Today it is common for Jews to elide the descriptions of the Mishkan, portable sanctuary, and that of the temple in Jerusalem. And in many ways it's something to celebrate, that our nomadic and sojourner experience eventually leads to a home of our own, so that we can plant, so to speak, our Mishkan in a permanent home. And indeed, historically, implements from the Mishkan make their way into the temple. But we rarely consider what was lost in the transition from portable sanctuary to permanent edifice, from the indigenous period, from the nomadic period, to the temple period, to the Israelite period. So think of the Mishkan as part of the shepherd period, nomadic, portable, deep connection to the land, to harmony with it, and to sustainability. So now picture the Mishkan for a second, right? No temple in Jerusalem, not allowed. So picture a beautiful, I know, I love it, beautiful shower curtain poles and shower curtain hooks. And the poles go on, and then another one goes, and then another one goes, and they're put up on posts. And on the shower hooks, we hang beautiful tapestries. Very much like much of human history, when those formed the walls over stone and other things and within wood. And those beautiful individual, think of the implements of the temple, which are relatively small structures, easily portable, easily taken apart. Think of even the metalwork, where we're told in the Mishkan, think of this as a shepherd period wisdom. You don't cast things like they cast the golden calf. Don't make molds and pour things in. Do hammer work. Bang things out. Now think of these differences among them, and think of the ark itself. Instead of a tall, vertical, majestic ark, think of a horizontal ark with resting on long poles. So that on each side, people can get up and lift it and walk. Looks a lot like an Egyptian bark, and that's why scholars say we got the ark from the bark. I'm not lying about that, by the way. All deeply portable. Now, think of that as an insight into sustainability and harmony with the land. You're using the least possible resources from the land, and each part of it is easily replaceable and repairable. Right? So when we get to the large edifice period in the temple, and you've got things made of brick and actually of stone, gigantic stones, not so easy to fix. One stone falls, and another stone falls, and the whole thing falls, and then all you have is a retaining wall, which we call the kotel. You can't fix a large edifice, not with ease. But shower curtains and tapestries for walls, simple implements, even hammer work. You re-hammer it. You can't re-hammer something that is cast, that has cracked from a mold. I was impressed, it really stuck with me when I watched the beautiful miniseries Shogun on Hulu this past year. So if you haven't seen it, it's a wonderful miniseries, of course, made from James Michener? Cavell. Oh, the Jameses. Sorry, James Cavell. It's not the Richard Chamberlain version that I idolized in my youth, but this recent version of it, trying to be much more authentic to the time period, one of the things I learned is throughout Shogun, in the time of the Portuguese Empire, that the Westerner, the European, says to them, why do you just build your homes out of these like rice paper walls and panels? You know, like we build higher and stronger in Europe. And they say, because of all the earthquakes. So when the earthquakes happen, they collapse, and we can rebuild overnight. You can't do that with edifices. And then I thought back to the Mishkan. How easy for it to be repaired. How easy for it to be loved and sustained in that way. What if the objects in our lives had this feature of the Mishkan? What if we were connected to, kind of in a harmonious way, to the objects that are part of our lives? What if they were easy to repair? So years ago, when I was lucky enough to finally get a car, thank you to my brother Barack, who basically gave me his car, and I was in my late 20s or early 30s. I love this little Chevy, but sometimes the yellow light would go on. And I was like, oh no, I don't have any money to repair this thing, and I don't know what to do. I think I'll just drive it with the yellow light. So then I had to find out, what do you do when your yellow light is on? And as you know, you have to take it in to get a code pulled. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I take my car in, I can say it's a minimum of $300 or $400, like even if it's just an oil change. So I'm like, and you have to take it to the dealer or something like that. So I'm like, I don't know how to get these codes, you probably do. And then I met my roommate, or one of my roommates at the time, said, I have a little machine, I think it's illegal, but I can plug it up in and get the code off, and then the code will just say, this little thing happened, you don't have to worry about it, so you don't have to bring in the car. Right? And I was like, where is this magical device and where did it come from? I've noticed over the years that I used to, like with my laptop, it was always the battery that went first. You know, I find, when you first buy a laptop, I love laptops. You know, for 4 hours I can work on it. Then it's 3, then it's 2, and then on most of my laptops I end up with about 20 minutes. And so that's when I say to Beth Jarvis in the office, I can't do this anymore. I need a laptop. It used to be I could pop out the battery and put in a new battery, and all of those precious metals and toxic substances kept going and kept going. Have you noticed that you can't pop out batteries anymore? Have you noticed that Apple doesn't allow you to replace parts or batteries? They don't even allow you to fix your own phones. I've noticed that laptops I've had where I just leave them plugged in for the kids, although now you guys have real laptops, so I'm kosher with you. But back when I was just doing that, who cares about the battery? I noticed that at time it would say it would no longer function. It would say, this computer can no longer get to Windows 11. It doesn't have the proper requirements. I said, I don't care about Windows 11. But then if I waited a little longer, eventually it would stop working. And I was like, why is that allowed? That we have things that take so much energy and resources of our land to produce, and we have no way to fix them. You may know that John Deere, our proud American manufacturer of farm equipment, does not allow farmers to repair it. They basically sign an agreement when you buy a John Deere that you will not repair it yourself. And so you end up in situations where it gives a code, and then it stops working, and you have to call John Deere, and they send someone out, typically for just a visit to your house, $800, even if it's just a wire that got hanging out, and you had to push it back in. So some states have started right to repair laws. That by state, that you have a right. Manufacturers have to provide you at least a manual. I used to always get manuals with my stuff. I always threw them out because they were usually half in Spanish. But now you don't even have to get a manual with the things you buy. And you don't. And so states like Colorado have started passing laws that you have a right to repair your own equipment rather than acceding to the idea that edifices, like the objects in our lives, once they break, they only can be in a landfill. and you have to buy a whole new one and start from scratch. So I was struck just recently, I'll use one more example, which is Nintendo. So we had a Wii. If you guys like Nintendo Wii, I love Nintendo Wii. It's the best console of all time for playing games. And it actually got you off your couch. A couple years ago, they just decided that they would not only no longer support, but essentially the 100 million Wii Nintendo consoles in circulation would no longer function. The lack of the right to repair disproportionately affects lower income families who cannot afford to update and buy new. Today, there's no right to a manual, there's no right to buy a part yourself. You are forced into disposal and repurchase. Isn't the definition of sustainability the ability to repair? Moses Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah legal code talks about the mitzvah of al tashchit, not wasting, and specifically uses the example that if you can repair your furniture, you may not break it down for firewood, and if you can repair your clothing, you may not rip it up into rags. It's exactly this indigenous wisdom paradigm, one period to another, to be connected to the earth and the materials we draw from it, that we use in our lives, and that we lovingly repair rather than dispose of. Right to repair legislation was taken off of the docket in Michigan last year, where it was proposed and initially was passing through Congress. Maybe it's time for us to stand up for those who don't have the resources to repair, and those to stand up for the image of our Mishkan, image of something holy and beautiful. Each part of it can be